Who do I look like? If you don't know me, I'm Sue, Kay's oldest. What a dynamo, our little hurricane. She was a force to be reckoned with for sure. If something wasn't right, it just wasn't right. And she let you know. She was going to write a letter. God help you if you work for the Peoria Journal-Star or Comcast or any place that done her wrong. She had daily phone chats with the customer service reps when she didn't get her newspaper in the morning. They promised her credits and free papers, but she wouldn't have it. She wanted her newspaper. How else would she know when the Packers or Wisconsin or Illinois were playing? It was a full-blown travesty. I grew up with, "Stay out of my kitchen," when I would hover and get in the way while she was cooking, especially bacon, hoping to snag a piece when she wasn't looking. And "Stop banging on that piano," when I was trying to be the next Barry Manilow after she got home from work and she was trying to cook dinner in peace and quiet. Mom was a great cook. Many people are either cookers or bakers, but she was both. There is hardly a meal that I make today that she didn't make when we were kids. Hamburger stroganoff over crispy rice noodles, tomato soup, green bean hamburger, mashed potato casserole, and tater tot casserole are still some of my favorites. And she made a heck of a meatloaf and soup. She loved to make soup in the crock pot. Since she was a mom of the 70s, running the household and working, she would often leave me instructions for putting something in the oven for dinner when I got home from school. And I would have to often call her at Dr. Moran's office with questions or something truly unimportant just to talk to her. It was like I had to check in when I got home, or at least tattle on the boys. Mom made the best bacon. She always said, the secret to good bacon is in the turning, as in you can't just turn it once, you have to keep turning it to get both sides even and not overdone. Combined with her perfect scrambled eggs and toast from her homemade bread, it was a breakfast fit for kings and queens. I can still see her standing at the stove making never enough bacon, but perfect bacon. I think her favorite thing to make was banana bread. There was always a mini loaf sent home with us when we would come for a visit, or a loaf in a care package if she came to visit us in Macomb or came to hear me preach. That first recipe is still my favorite today, even though she's tried several variations, like adding applesauce when she didn't have enough rotten bananas. I always wondered why she had so many rotten bananas all of the time. I think she just let them go bad so she could make loaves to freeze or give away. She also liked to make peanut butter cookies and caramel corn. I just had some at Christmas. No matter what I try making, it just isn't like hers. One thing she never totally imparted upon me was how she made such good gravy. My husband Tim said, "Sue, it's called salt," as if to say my gravy lacked everything. The kitchen and the deck were her favorite places to be. She would sit in her robe at the patio table, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, if she got one that morning. She talked about the birds at their feeders and those nasty blue jays picking on all of the other birds. She took many pictures of flowers and birds from her deck as well. If she wasn't in the house, she was on the deck. If she was in the house, she was on the couch looking out at the deck. I never knew how much she was into TV until her later years. She didn't have time while we were growing up except for an occasional Saturday when we would watch ABC's Wide World of Sports together. After I got a job and moved away, she would call to tell me that there was some wonderful show on PBS that I just had to turn the channel to. I didn't always do that. She would record all of her shows that she didn't get to watch in real time and stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning getting everything watched before her recording started the next day. She recorded ball games and British shows like Doc Martin and Are You Being Served, and would share some of the funny bits when she called and would just laugh and laugh. She would also say, "Did you hear about so-and-so on the news?" And I would say, "No, I didn't." And then she would get after me for watching that goofy science fiction crap all the time. When she was following Jeff Gordon in NASCAR, she would say, "Did you watch the race?" And I would have to admit that NASCAR was not on my list of things to watch. She couldn't understand that. But one thing we both loved was music. She played cornet in the Marching Hornets marching band in high school. She told me that French horn was her favorite instrument, so somehow I wound up playing French horn pretty much for the past 50 years. She never missed a concert when I was young and was always there to support the various activities I was in. I still can't figure out how she knew when to pick me up from practices without having a cell phone. Mom was never afraid of hard work. She grew up on a farm with chores to be done. We kids would ride the big cub tractor to mow the yard, and she would do the trimming with the push mower. When we were younger, Dad had apartments that needed cleaning between tenants, and she would tackle the stove and refrigerator while I had the easy job of painting the trim and walls. She would do the things no one else wanted to do. One of her favorite groups of people was the elderly. She worked at Restmore Nursing Home part-time for years and went on rounds with the doctor. When my Grandma Kent was very near the end of her life, Mom sat at her ex-mother-in-law's bedside giving her juice as she laid there dying. It didn't bother Mom at all, and I'm sure she was glad to do it. I can still picture her in her nurse's uniform during her lunch hour, tenderly holding the cup and straw so Grandma could access it easily. Grandma Kent always liked my mom. One of my favorite things about my mom was her smile. She had a great smile. Her eyes even twinkled a bit. I can understand why people loved having her as their nurse because of that smile. We were always greeted with her happy face and a hug when we came to the house for a visit. Maybe the most valuable thing she taught me was how to be a mom. Not taught necessarily, but showed. She was a great example. She wasn't a spanker, and she didn't talk us to death, but we knew when we were in trouble and felt terrible for behaving badly. She tried to get us kids to clean house on Saturdays, but it was a struggle. We were lazy and didn't see the need for clean rooms. Now I do. She would wash the sheets and towels every week or two like clockwork and call to ask me if I had done mine, just to make sure that I was being a good wife and mother. I would have to say that I was a little behind, and she would say, "Susan," the way she did when she was shocked and disappointed. I remember when Alex, our oldest, was born, she stayed for about a week to help us with everything. The doctor said no cereal for the first few months because it could cause allergies, and we tried to cooperate, but late one night, Alex was starving and crying, and breastfeeding just wasn't cutting it. She whipped up some cereal and shoved a few spoonfuls in his mouth despite our protests. He stopped crying, and he grew up just fine. Mom loved her family and close friends fiercely. Lunches with Mary Howard and with Rhonda were always of note when she called me. She would tell me who was over to the house and the foods that she fixed out of nothing so that everyone had enough to eat. She knew hospitality. I got updates on who mowed what with their fancy lawnmowers and who stopped by. Christmas and Thanksgiving were her favorite times, I think, because she got to be around family and food. When the boys would bring home girlfriends or there were step-grandkids, she got them presents too so they wouldn't feel left out. She relished those red tag and half-price sales after the holidays so she could buy perfume and gifts for us girls, saving them until it was the right time to give them to us. She was very generous and thoughtful. I can only imagine the amount of money she spent over the years on yarn for crocheting Afghans and bananas and bread flour. I could go on, but it would delay lunch even longer, so I will stop there. A good friend of mine recently said to me, "She loved you the longest." Well, Mom, I loved you the longest too, and always will. You will be greatly, greatly missed.